And full disclosure, Ben, I'm born and raised in Michigan. So let's paint the picture here. Jameson Williams said, the fans done made us feel like we done already won the Super Bowl. It's almost impossible, Ben, to explain to a national audience just what that win over the Rams meant last week.
No, it really is, because some of my other friends scattered across other teams and beats in the leagues have been like, man, that team is celebrating a division title, celebrating a playoff win like they just won the Super Bowl. And I'm like, you know what? Because they have no idea what this feels like. The division title, the first in 30 years. The home playoff game, the first in 30 years. The playoff win, the first in 32 years. I mean, it's so – I will never forget that experience in the win over the Rams for the rest of my life. The crowd, from an hour before kickoff to an hour after kickoff, there was a buzz. I mean, an audible buzz. I mean, it's been the craziest week and a half span of my life, because, I mean, I started on this beat when Matt Patricia was the head coach. So I've gone from the darkest of times and the most media hating of times from inside of an organization to this success and just the gems that Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes are to cover. So it's a whole new world. It's a whole new job, and it's just what a ride, man. It's seriously, I'm a lifelong Michigander too, so I know what this means. I know what this means to my friends. I know what this means to my family. I know what this means to everybody around me, and it's very hard to explain and put into words, but special.
Great answer.
Ben, I was going to clown you and Patrick on the win and the celebration, but then you mentioned you had to cover Matt Patricia, that motivational speaker, so I do apologize for that. But we were talking about pressure on coaches. How much pressure, I know they got the huge win last weekend, is there on Dan Campbell with the way things shake out in this postseason, hosting Tampa, and then possibly hosting the NFC Championship game?
You know, there's internal pressure, but I don't think there's a ton of outside pressure from this fan base because, I mean, him winning a playoff game, him winning the division already makes him up there with the greatest coaches in this franchise's history 3 years in. And, I mean, I think the thing that gets lost in all of this is how ahead of schedule this team is. I mean, this was a torn-down, depleted roster after they traded Matthew Stafford for a broken-down Jared Goff that the Rams didn't want and a bunch of picks. And here they are. After 2 tough years, the great finish last year, to have 12 wins, matches a franchise record. I mean, there's pressure, but I think the pressure that they might feel from the outside looking in is because it is the Bucs. You know, this is an opponent that they beat by 2 touchdowns on the road earlier this season. So I think while it would be disappointing to lose to the Bucs and disappointing to end the season like that at home against a team you already beat this year, the pressure's off. You know, the pressure, the real pressure starts next year when this team is supposed to start looking like a perennial contender.
Ben Raven, MLive.com. Make sure you check out MLive. It's a tremendous writing. Benjamin S. Raven on Twitter. Let's talk about the matchup. And from a betting perspective, look, you talked about it was almost like a workmanlike 20-6 win down in Tampa in October. But let's be fair, Ben. This should be a win for the Lions. They can make the Bucs one-dimensional. Lions have a great run defense, and the Bucs can't run the football. So, like, that's a recipe. If you're the Lions, this should be a comfortable win, but it's the postseason.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the Lions have proven over the last month, you know, 2 matchups with Jefferson, a matchup with CeeDee Lamb, and even last week with Puka, that they are really embracing this bend but don't break defense. I mean, they have been shredded by star receivers over the last month, but here they are winning playoff games, going 3-1 down the stretch or whatever it was. And, you know, last week I think they showed, like, that red zone defense, that run defense that you mentioned, and Tampa's inability to run the ball. I mean, they're going to need the big shots with Mike Evans downfield. They're going to need Trey Palmer going off, or it's going to be a pretty similar game to last time. And the one thing people are overlooking is that the Lions offense, you know, Jared Goff threw the ball around back in week 6 against this team, but no Jahmyr Gibbs for that first meeting, and David Montgomery, I think, got hurt after something like 4 or 5 or 6 carries. So, like, and that was Jameson Williams' first game back, so they were without some horses. They were breaking a wide receiver in, like, the Lions' offense has gotten a lot better since that date too, especially with the health returning. But yeah, this should be a Lions win. I mean, I think the Bucs will have a little more success on offense this time around. Probably punch it in at least once this time. But yeah, I kind of expect the Lions to control this game from the start because, like you said, I mean, there's no reason in my mind that the Bucs would be able to run the ball on this defense because that's the one part of Aaron Glenn's group that's been consistent. and consistently better every step of the way is that run defense, specifically against running backs. Mobile quarterbacks is a different question, but run defense against running backs, I mean, they have the real ability to make Tampa as one-dimensional as possible from the get in this one.
Ben, you and Patrick both mentioned it, just 46 yards rushing for the Buccaneers in that first matchup. Let's go to the other side of the ball. It appears on paper, Ben, that the Lions have a decided advantage in the passing game against the Tampa pass defense. Do you expect Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta's total is 3.5 catches this week, to really be able to dominate from an offensive standpoint through the air?
Yeah, I really do, because the connection that St. Brown and Goff have is pretty special. It really is. And I think the national audience is getting a taste of that this season. But, I mean, you see it last week, a chance to put away the game. It's 2nd and 9. The Rams have one timeout. And what are the Lions doing? Not leaning on that rushing attack that's helped them get this far. They're leaning on Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown to make a timing connection, and that's exactly what happened. And I'll say this about Laporta. 3.5 after he played most of the snaps and started last week, he's going to be right up there with St. Brown as a focal point in this attack. I mean, he proved that he could handle it. He proved he could play through the pain. I mean, it's St. Brown, Laporta. You got Josh Reynolds playing the way he is. And, I mean, Jameson Williams, he caught a big touchdown pass against this Bucs defense, too. So they gotta make sure for him, because J-Mo has continued to get more comfortable, to be a better all-around receiver for this offense. I mean, the stats aren't showing it, but when he's on the field, he's been just better every single game out. They can lean on him. But St. Brown and Goff, I mean, there's no reason St. Brown shouldn't see 15, 16, 17 targets in this game, because when he's the focal point of this offense, they're at their best.
Patrick, just to build, I'm sorry, 39 catches, 562 yards, and 4 touchdowns for Amon-Ra St. Brown in the last 5 games, including the playoffs.
Yeah, he's been awesome. Ben, quickly a prediction, then I have a follow-up for you. Can you give me a prediction on this game on Sunday?
Yeah. I actually just filed my official prediction. You know, I'm taking the Lions, and I'm taking them by 2 scores. I think I did 23-10. You know, a little more scoring, not a ton more scoring, but I do think the Lions control this game by 2 scores, and I do think you'll see a ton of David Montgomery in the second half.
Lions in the under. Okay, Ben, we have 2 minutes, and I want you to explain to the audience, because I have friends that cover the Lions, and the Patricia era was something, Ben, as you know. What's the difference in covering Dan Campbell? Give us an idea of his personality.
It's like dealing with a human being versus not dealing with a human being. I mean, seriously, it's as easy as that. From setting our media schedule to having a locker room full of players that aren't taught to treat us like the enemy I'll just say this, Dan Campbell is like incapable of lying, even when he's in front of all of us on a daily basis at press conferences. He does his absolute best to give you an answer to everything you ask him, but honestly, it's that first point I made. It's a human. It's a former player who understands what these guys are going through, but it's also a coach who learned under Bill Parcells, who learned under Sean Payton, who has used those experiences to be just like, I mean, honestly, I worked on the news side of journalism for 5 years. I've been on the Lions beat for 5 years now. This is the most genuine person I've ever dealt with in any field. It's unbelievable. Wow. The same when we get to talk to Brad Holmes, it's the same too. But Dan Campbell, that is the definition of a player's coach, and he's proven to be so much more than the meathead label he got in year one, because the guy, in my opinion, is an offensive mastermind just waiting in the grass. You know, I mean, before Ben Johnson took over play calling, it was Dan Campbell to unlock that passing attack. It was Dan Campbell to get more out of Jared Goff. I mean, shoot, he has used aggressiveness to take this team to the next level. They go for it on 4th down more than anybody, and that's because he believes in his pieces, and he believes that going for it on 4th down increases your probability of winning. So he is analytical. He's old school. He's a meathead. He's a player's coach. He's all of those things in one. And it's real. It's not just coach speak. I mean, that is who he really is. And it's just, you feel it. You feel it every day on that beat.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds. Listen for free. Find showtimes and download VSiN sports betting podcasts.